Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers, and I'm also the reviews editor of the Barrister magazine. This review is for the Barrister magazine, and it's dealing with the Bar Conference, which has just taken place in November 2021. It's actually an appreciation that I've written with Elizabeth of that conference, the actual in-person conference, which was actually the bar and the young bar. We've given a title for our view, which is in the new edition coming out of the Barrister magazine, of a very different bar conference. And you can see that is the actual programme that we had for the event. It was spread over a number of days, and we actually went to London to the Connaught Rooms for the actual conference. And this is what we say about it. We certainly live in different times, and this year's Bar Conference of 2021 was historically the first Bar Conference conducted online as well as in person, a hybrid in fact. This of course will come as no surprise to the bar. It was as good an indication as ever that the bar, after hundreds of years, remains as resilient as ever, even in the face of the COVID menace, which persists in every aspect of life. Now, on Saturday, the 20th of November 2021, we found 100 or so people at the Connaught Rooms in central London for this special conference with a difference. As a hybrid affair, it proceeded partly online and partly in person, and it worked. In spirit, it reflected, in a sense, what many of us have been doing as barristers and mediators for the past 18 months, being resilient and being resourceful. Now, the weekday sessions had taken place beforehand, online. So let's go back a couple of days to Wednesday the 17th of November, when Derek Sweeting, Queen's Counsel, the chair of the bar, opened the online part of the conference, and Lord Burnett of Malden, the Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales, began the conference with his vision of justice in 2022, offering us an overview of his priorities for next year. And the Lord Chief Justice was followed by a return performance from Baroness Hale, who addressed us pre-pandemic, of course, and then came back to us for more, with an exploration of the state of the rule of law. It's always useful and very nice to see her. And Lady Hale was joined by another stalwart of our events, Baroness Helena Kennedy of the Shaw's Queen's Counsel, also Professor Phillip Sands, Queen's Counsel of Matrix Chambers, and Sophie in 't Veld, the MEP, for a Dutch MEP from the European Parliament. We were also very lucky throughout to have excellent sponsorship from a number of sponsors, including LexisNexis, Vector Professionals, Finance, Mitigo Cybersecurity and Currencies Direct. And also there were exhibitors on the day, and there were a number of links as well from these people: Advanced, Charles Cameron and Associates, the ICLR, that's the International Incorporated Council rather of Law Reporting, Advocate, Fru and Complete. And as I say, there were a number of stalls which we could go and see at the Saturday event. The exhibitor stands were very well patronised actually on the Saturday, and it was great to see so many familiar faces as well as new ones after the enforced absence of almost 2 years. Overall, the main theme of this memorial hybrid gathering was recovery, growth and transformation. And as I've said, it was the annual bar, but it's also the young bar with it. And there's actually a theme that went with that, because on Saturday, Derek Sweeting elaborated on what the future of justice looks like in a world changed by the pandemic. A rapt audience was then encouraged to consider the transformations that are needed or expected to take place throughout the justice system and within the profession. And interestingly, Derek's opening speech on the Saturday began with a reflection of his earlier role, that was in the army as a tank commander in Germany, which explained in part why he had settled on a career in law after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which I found fascinating because that was the time I was called to the bar, of course. Now, We then moved on to a subheading which I've given in the article, which is "Respect for the rule of law has stalled." So it's a sort of quote. Because Derek's noteworthy narrative was followed by his rather sombre statement that respect for the rule of law has stalled, whilst we, as lawyers who toil in the front line, continue our struggle to protect the law as a precious asset, while being fully aware of the challenge of upholding it. This point popped up persistently throughout these hybrid sessions, which, by the way, I think worked almost seamlessly. Better, in fact, than some of us had thought possible. But there again, you have to be realistic, as we all are at the bar, and you have to make do with what you've got. Now, for those attending in person and those watching online, the main topics, and I can't cover everything, obviously, in this short review, but the main topics included the role of technology, access to the bar, working practices, barristers' individual and collective business development, and management, effectively, of how we do our business. And the outcome of our deliberations was the opportunity to chat about the way ahead and the need to identify how the bar and the young bar, as well as the wider legal sector, would be able to flourish at a time of change of opportunity. And we are at a cusp in many ways with the changes, lower number of vacancies for pupillage, and a different way in which we are approaching the work, our clients. The way the judges are approaching us has changed, I think, too, in the 30 odd years that I've now been practicing. We then moved on to another excellent session. The title we gave for that is "We are all in the same storm, but not in the same boat." That's a quote. And we were fortunate, therefore, to hear from Joanne Kane. As I say, this is the young bar as well as the bar itself. And Joanne is the chair of the Young Barristers Committee. Now, a few of us listening to her lively talk will probably never forget our early years of practice and the problems many of us faced at the beginning of our professional lives. So we are all in the same storm but not in the same boat, is what she said, continuing her theme that many junior practitioners continue to face pre-existing challenges, including inadequate remuneration, of which more later, and inequality of opportunity, as well as obstacles to individual well-being, and "we are all in this together," as someone once said within recent memory. Designed specifically for the young bar, there had been practical sessions throughout during the week to provide guidance on how to be an effective junior and a persuasive advocate in what is such a different world now for many of us. I think that was very helpful. I didn't really get very much of that when I was at the beginning of my practice, so I think that is a tremendous help for the younger barrister. It was Joanne who added that there is work to be done by all in the profession to improve diversity, address working conditions, and to safeguard the future of the profession. That's really what the raison d'etre is for the Bar Council at the moment, and what we're doing. Now, on behalf of the young bar, Joanne provided us with a valuable contribution on issues facing all practitioners, young and just a bit older. Promptly afterwards, we were delighted to see who should turn up but the Lord Chancellor Dominic Raab MP, in the form of a video clip. His dissertation, intended to be reassuring, was frankly a statement of the obvious for most of us. What would have been more effective and possibly more courageous might have been if the Lord Chancellor had been to a Q&A session when the issues he didn't want to discuss could have been raised. We intend, of course, to raise them anyway, as any good barrister would, as we now await the delayed report on the future of criminal legal aid levels, which will come from the Bellamy report. Now, that should be with you by the time you read the article in the Barrister magazine. I'm recording this just before Christmas, and the magazine will be out round about Christmas time. And of course, as usual, legal aid was one of the elephants in the room throughout the Saturday session, and will continue to be so, I think, together with the Court of State and the issues therein, and all that is wrong with HMCTS at the moment. And there are a lot of problems. No good blaming people. It's a matter of trying to be positive, going out there and trying to fix it, and actually raising issues of concern with people. Now, 2 further sessions that followed included the Picture of Justice for the next 5 years, and yes, you guessed it, IT and all things online, starring the master of the role, Sir Geoffrey Voss, who put up a spirited defence of what is his anticipatory vision of an online future. And I have to say Geoffrey was very good value. I did look at 1 or 2 faces in the room, and 1 or 2 older people were probably not quite following some of it, but he was brilliant, I thought, in trying to set out where we're going. Joining Geoffrey were Penelope Gibbs from Transform Justice, who was very good value as well, and Her Honour Judge Sally Cahill, Queen's Counsel, who's president of the Council of Her Majesty's Circuit Judges, was extremely precise and very courageous, I think, for actually being prepared to talk to us from her position, because it's not an easy job to have, that one. Then we had the genial Clive Coleman, the ex-BBC man, who was in the Joshua Rosenberg slot, if I can put it that way, effectively hosting that session. It was an important session focusing on modernising the system to improve the changing needs of the court user. And the panellists were impressive, always returning to the political problem of legal aid, which always seems to neuter what the judiciary would like to say. And they're in a very difficult position. I go back 30 years and think of what powers they had then, and really where they are today. It actually is of some concern to me, bearing in mind they are very much hamstrung. This, however, didn't stop other contributors, and it would have been better, of course, I think, to have had longer time for questions in these sessions. But, you know, there is a limited amount of time, and there was a lot to cover. However, we did overrun a bit, straying into what is known as barrister's time, as we often do like to talk, don't we? But that's the way it is. Now, we then moved on to diversity, which is bound to be here and present in a substantial way. The pre-lunch session then was chaired by David Lammy, MP. David will be known to many of you as a practising barrister in the past, and of course a Labour MP for Tottenham. He was a rather subdued Shadow Justice Secretary, I thought, uncharacteristically quiet. He was, although the more, obviously, as he was, the more voluble panellists, I thought, were also very first class, because it's a difficult area. We had Barbara Mills, Queen's Counsel, Her Honour Judge Emma Knott from Reading Crown Court, with some splendid slides, which perhaps we might see eventually, Chinwe Odimba Chapman from Clifford Chance, and Grace Ononwi from the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, this was an important session, I thought, for everybody, because of the issues thrown up by the massive problems relating to fair and equitable distribution of work. It's always been a bugbear in chambers about who gets what. And I can remember all the problems a few years ago when I was looking at how the work was allocated. So there was a difficulty. Obviously, diversity, together with legal aid, will doubtless continue to be among the most difficult and pressing subjects for the bar in the future, along, of course, with all the other issues which determine who is and who isn't destined to succeed at the bar. It depends on what you mean by succeed as well, because for many of us, I'm a junior member of the bar, as a senior junior, I'm very pleased to do what I'm doing. I don't want silk, and I don't want judicial preferment of any sort, and I'm quite happy to do what I'm doing with the clients that I represent. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. We just have our niche and we get on with it. It's not like Carry On Sergeant Rumpole from Mortimer books. It's not like that at all. It's the way that we do things. But it was not too depressing a session, this one, because the issues it raised will remain collectively a work in progress matter, I think, for all practitioners, and I was glad that we had that opportunity. Now, following lunch, and it was a good lunch too, and further visits to the exhibitors, the afternoon sessions were dominated by what I thought were two fascinating panel discussions on the subjects of Twitter and legal journalism. There were obviously other things taking place as well, but I'm concentrating on what I thought came out of this conference. The conference, of course, would not be completed without a visit from the famous, notorious mystery man, and we know as a man, the secret barrister, though Crime Girl was not sadly present. Now, Joanne Kane reprised her earlier role in developing what the Young Buyers are doing by acting as SB's spokesperson, and she did an excellent job, ably chaired by PR man Keith Hardy and tweeter extraordinaire Sean Jones, Queen's Counsel of 11 KBW. Now, where Sean gets the time to tweet was beyond many of us, but his advice was sanguine, and I have followed up one or two of his suggestions, which I thought were quite interesting. The panel including the evasive, exclusive, elusive SB shared their world-weary views on the global phenomenon of Twitter, the do's and the don'ts of using this social media outlet. LinkedIn clearly was not a runner for social media barristers, which I thought was a bit surprising. The point of this session was whether social media has a role to play in increasing public awareness of the justice system and building a professional brand. Well, yes, it does for many of us, but perhaps not quite yet for all of us, because I think there are a lot of people who look at this, view it with a lot of caution, and it's understandable. Now, we then move on to what I thought was probably, for us, it was getting towards the middle of the afternoon, and we've given this the heading, Making Headlines and the Need for Skeletons. I'll explain that because this is about the journalism, legal journalism. As we delegates were aware, the ladies and gentlemen of the press were much in evidence, presumably slaving away on their computers, following our every move as hybrids. Now, these distinguished legal reptiles, including the ever-excellent Jonathan Ames from The Brief and as the Times legal editor, plus Lizzie Dearden from The Independent, and the courageous Tristram Kirk from the Evening Standard, and Jess Glass from the High Court Reporting Group. They gave a very good session, and it's something I think is very important for us to know where we are today as barristers and what we can and can't do. There are lots of misunderstandings, and a great session it was. But just remember the golden rule, that there is no such thing as off the record if you're talking to a journalist. If you say something to a journalist, he or she will use it. It's quite simple. Doesn't matter who you are, politician, lawyer, barrister, silk, whatever. If you say something, if they think there's a story in it, they will use it. So, journalists need to be told about important cases. So do make sure, if you want some publicity, if that's what you wish to do, make sure you send your skeletons if you want coverage, and tell them. Because the one question I think is very valuable, having been in the law reports myself, in fact it wasn't something I initiated, it was done by the journalists, but generally speaking they need to be told, because there's a lot going on and they will not know a lot of what a case is about until they've seen a skeleton and got some idea of whether there's a story in it. Let me conclude by thanking everybody who attended and everybody who participated. It was a superb conference. See you in 22 is what I've said. This was indeed a very different conference this year, 2021. One which fortunately didn't pour the striped pants off anyone, including Jonathan Ames, and he'll know what I mean by that. So I will close with a resoundingly loud thank you to everybody who attended, whether by hybrid or not. It was so nice to be back together again after enforced 2-year absence. And as I say, that was the actual agenda. I've actually got those are some photographs of Derek and Joanne and various other things, including stuff I've written all over the agenda and so forth. And we've also got, this is actually the article as it will appear in the Barrister for the Hilary Term, which is just coming up. That's page 2 of it. So thank you to everybody for listening to me. I do urge everybody, if you've got the time, to go to the Bar Conference in 2022. It's amazing how much you learn. I certainly did. I want to thank everyone again. Bye-bye.